Hello, in today's video, we will focus on the concepts of becoming and passing away, or genesis and phthora, as the pre-Socratic philosophers understood them. These two terms express the processes of emergence and disappearance of beings in the universe. In ancient Greece, natural philosophers tried to understand the fundamental nature of the universe through these concepts. Different ideas, such as Heraclitus's teaching of constant change and flux, Parmenides' understanding of being that opposes change, and Anaximander's idea of infinity, shaped how these processes were perceived. Let's see together how they interpreted the beginning and the end of the universe. Nietzsche lists the three problems of philosophy before Plato as follows: becoming, purpose, and the value of knowledge. According to him, becoming, the most everyday phenomenon, is the beginning of Ionian philosophy. The Eleatics discussed this problem at a high level, and ultimately, starting from the view that our minds cannot grasp becoming, they accepted the existence of a metaphysical world. Nietzsche makes two claims at this point. All subsequent philosophers struggle with the teachings of the Eleatic school, and this struggle continues until skepticism. In the search for the first principle, which philosophers like Thales, Anaximenes, and Anaximander began to discuss for the first time, the diversity of views, the problem of change, and naturally, the issue of becoming and passing away came to the fore. Empedocles, Anaxagoras, and the atomists followed the two opposite approaches of Heraclitus and Parmenides with three compatible systems. All of these views rejected absolute becoming and passing away. They proposed many immortal and unchanging basic substances. The prominent names regarding the problem of becoming in this period are Heraclitus, Parmenides, Empedocles, Anaxagoras, and the atomists. It will be seen that Aristotle also examined these names. Therefore, it is sufficient to include only these names and Anaximander as a background example in the context of this study. The explanation of becoming and the nature of the first matter are evaluated as interconnected. Anaximander presents an important example of this connection. Where the origins of things are, they will necessarily perish there. Nietzsche explains the background of Anaximander's identification of the first matter as apeiron by saying that it ensures that becoming does not stop. Anaximander's apeiron is indefinite and eternal because it is cleansed of specific qualities that lead it to perish. The first being so named is above becoming, and for him it ensures the eternity of becoming, its unimpeded continuation. After the material conception of the arche as water, Anaximander introduces the apeiron to explain becoming and passing away, and at the same time he turns from the physical realm to metaphysics. On the other hand, Anaximander realized that becoming continues and, in parallel with this view, thought that the origin of eternal becoming could be an eternal being. However, Anaximander states that what has quality is born and perishes. According to him, becoming is an injustice, and its punishment is passing away. When we come to Heraclitus, who dealt with this problem to the extent that he can be called a philosopher of becoming, it is seen that his famous fragments emphasize the continuous nature of becoming and change. For example, although the river fragment is related to the view of the soul, it also has a counterpart in the view of nature. Different waters flow over those who step into the same rivers. Souls evaporate from what is wet. In Heraclitus's view of becoming, the transformation of the four basic elements that the Milesian philosophers built their cosmologies on is observed. The cold warms up, the hot cools down, the wet dries, the dry gets wet. Heraclitus states that within the emergence of the infinite, an infinite becoming is hidden. In Heraclitus's view of becoming, the original substance goes through three basic forms. The substance changes from fire to from water to earth, and vice versa, from earth to water, from water to fire. Everything is subject to this process of change, but while losing on the one hand, they give the impression of remaining the same because a certain substance is accepted on the other. We can illustrate this with the fragment, "The sun is new every day." Heraclitus focuses on what is and flows and rejects permanence. The law of this infinite transformation is one, that is, fire. The multitude, in Nietzsche's words, is the ceremonial garment, the manifestation of the One. Heraclitus deals with this world of differences in relation to the One, and it manifests itself everywhere. Becoming and passing away are the basic characteristics of the principle. Passing away is not a punishment, as it is in Anaximander. In Heraclitus's three basic propositions, the harmony of opposites is addressed first. The second is the view that everything is in constant motion and change, which is a consequence of the first. The nature of change is explained as follows. Because change is a cyclical change from A to B and back to A again, and according to Heraclitus, what seemingly turns into something else and then returns to its previous state must in a way always be the same thing. Heraclitus and Parmenides are philosophers mentioned one after the other in evaluations of Greek philosophy. Parmenides' views are summarized below in their general framework. Since there is no change in God and God is everything, then what we call change is an appearance, an illusion, and in reality there is neither becoming nor dying. Being can only be conceived as eternal, unchanging, motionless, continuous, indivisible, infinite, and one. One should not get the impression that Parmenides denies being. The philosopher accepts being, but this being does not possess material elements. The coming into being of what exists is not a result of becoming. It is not born. It is entirely necessary to be. This does not mean that it came into being from nothing. The goddess of justice, Dike, did not allow becoming and passing away. Becoming is extinguished, and passing away is unheard of. It is excluded by true belief. And according to one fragment, by accepting the universe as motionless, he made becoming and passing away eternal. The point that Parmenides draws attention to when conveying his thoughts is that he reveals that the truth can only be attained through reason, and that this reason cannot grasp becoming, change, motion, that is, the transformation of something that exists into something that does not exist, and vice versa. What exists for Parmenides is not a static being. Just as the philosopher is a predecessor of Plato, in that he influenced him with the distinction between episteme and doxa, he also puts forward an idea about true being. The view that what does not exist exists is fundamentally wrong. According to Parmenides, it is not possible to think about the general change and movements of things. These are doxa because they are based on something that does not exist. The impact of the fundamental metaphysical oppositions between Heraclitus and Parmenides regarding being and becoming is as follows. With Parmenides, natural philosophers cleared their basic substances of absolute becoming and passing away, but in harmony with Heraclitus, they accepted a relative changeability, a combination and separation of these substances in particular beings. In other words, it led to the conciliatory systems of Empedocles, Anaxagoras, and the atomists. Nietzsche, on the other hand, makes a comparison between the two philosophers, stating that Heraclitus sees the infinite transformation of the single fire of all qualities, while Parmenides perceives the transformation of two opposite elements everywhere. On the other hand, the philosophers who defend the mechanistic view, which reduces change to change of place, differ from each other in terms of their cornerstones. The backbone of the system for Empedocles is motion. For Anaxagoras it is nous, and for Democritus it is matter. The point of agreement regarding Empedocles' thoughts is that the philosopher is attempting to reconcile Heraclitus and Parmenides. The situation can be summarized as follows. In the effort to reconcile eternal change and eternal immutability, there is neither absolute becoming nor passing away, and particular things are actually in a process of change. At this point, Empedocles, who introduced the idea of elements, states that the differentiation of substances from each other is not through atoms but through elements, and that these substances are quantitatively divisible. The four elements do not transform into each other. Elements are based on the mechanical mixture of their small parts. In the problem of how elements cause motion, Empedocles puts forward an original idea. Although opposites exist together in nature, a love that understands from within seeks to manifest itself, and the existence of objects is driven by the forces of love and hate. They are divine organ bodies that unite, dissolve, mix, or separate by pushing and pulling. The multi-organ body of the cosmos is completely filled with God. While Empedocles emphasizes the certainty of the qualitative immutability of what exists, he states that explaining the multiplicity of visible things will only be possible by accepting many beings that are qualitatively distinct and have formed the basis for spatial motion. On the other hand, Empedocles, in a way that will lay the foundations of atomism, based very small and unchanging particles on invisible processes of motion. Love and hate are natural forces whose actions are only influential. One should not overlook his mechanical system. As can be seen from his fragments on becoming and passing away, according to Empedocles, it is not possible for something to come into being from what does not exist, or for something that exists to completely disappear. Indeed, on the other hand, he says, mortal things neither come into being nor find their end in destructive death. What exists is only mixture and the separation of the mixture again. The word becoming is only in humans. Anaxagoras also finds his own unique place in discussions with the concept of nous. According to him, explaining order and continuity is possible through circular motion. Nous provides order in this way. On the other hand, despite mixtures, the different is not derived from the same. The qualities of rarefaction and condensation do not change. The different qualities of the world seem endless. The qualities of the world, in this sense, always exist, and there is no becoming or passing away. The source of differences is motion. Anaxagoras, who put forward the concept of nous, was influenced by Empedocles in his view that bodies are formed by the mixture and separation of the smallest particles. Abandoning the idea of elements, the philosopher states that these particles can only be seen with the mind's eye. It is the predominance of the same material particles that give a body a distinct quality. In this sense, Anaxagoras makes a distinction between mind and soul. He constructs his thought as a dualist. According to Anaxagoras, the Greeks do not use the words becoming and passing away correctly. Indeed, nothing in the original sense comes into being or perishes. A mixture and separation of pre-existing things occurs. Becoming is rightly the mixture of substances, and passing away is the separation of substances. To summarize Anaxagoras' views and to show his interaction with his predecessors, one can look at Nietzsche's views. While Anaximander's apeiron is defined as an inseparable mixture of all qualities, the initiation of becoming by the nous follows this as a gradual separation. In relation to Heraclitus, becoming is rejected. It is not a quality that transforms into something else. There is no single living element. According to Nietzsche, Heraclitus is the true adversary of Anaxagoras. His connection with the Eleatic school seems more complicated. Indeed, he puts forward his concept of the infinitely small and the numerically infinite based on the Eleatics, while, on the other hand, he opposes them by saying that the life force, which cannot perish in a dead, solid and motionless form, can be preserved in the nous. There is no empty space, there is motion. The origin of this motion is the nous, and nothing can come into being, nothing can perish. When we come to the views of Leucippus and Democritus, it is possible to say that we encounter serious views from the perspective of modern science as well. They explain change and becoming by talking about shapes, saying becoming and passing away in terms of dissolution and coming together, and change in terms of arrangement and position. According to the atomist view, the influencer and the influenced are the same and similar. Therefore, they influence each other in only one way. According to them, the main principle of the universe is atoms and void. Nothing comes into being from nothing, and nothing turns into nothingness. Atoms, which are infinite, move by rotating. Laertius, conveying Democritus's views, states that according to him, the quality of beings is the result of harmony, and that there is nothing else in nature except atoms and void. Atomists consider substances to be so small that they cannot be perceived by our senses, and they propose that there is an infinitely large void for them. In this sense, it is revealed that the elements are fullness and void. The former is what exists, the latter is what does not exist. Aristotle explains the relationship between atoms and void as follows. They move in the void because there is a void. When they come together, they bring about becoming, and when they dissolve, they cause passing away. In another fragment, without mentioning the efficient cause, the view is put forward that those who talk about motion are moved by nature. That is, the first and indivisible natural bodies are moved by changing places in the void. They move because of their weight and change places by passing through the void. While it is stated that the mode of motion of this displacement is vibration, on the other hand, it is stated that the infinite number of collisions of bodies with each other causes this motion. Although atoms are inherently motionless, it is said that they are set in motion by the impact of a blow. The views of the atomists have been greeted with admiration by many thinkers in the modern era. Indeed, Nietzsche emphasizes that they scientifically explain all phenomena based on the same principles. They have done this by presenting it as a third way between the systems of Heraclitus and the Eleatics on being and becoming. In this respect, it exhibits the characteristics of a conciliatory system. In the approaches of the pre-Socratic philosophers to the problem of becoming, although there are differences, there are also a few basic propositions that they agree on. Three preliminary questions that the Ionian natural scientists addressed stand out here. Natural things exist. These natural things constitute a single world of nature, and all natural things consist of a single substance or matter in common. The problem of becoming and passing away in natural philosophy constitutes an important stage in its treatment by the pre-Socratic philosophers. Socrates, on the other hand, did not pursue the issue.